All right, folks, welcome. I hope you can hear me okay and see me okay. How are you doing, Reem, Nelson, Wendy? Good to see all of you here. So I want to get started right now. What I've done is I've posted some of the questions that I've received so far in the chat. I'm going to take those questions first, and then if you've got questions, please put them in the chat and I'll take them in order. Right, thank you, Wendy and Reem. So as you know, today is Q&A. We're going to do a Q&A on consulting strategy, marketing, and growth. Great to have all you folks to be here. Yeah, welcome, Jimmy, as well. For those of you who've never been to these sessions, so this is called the Consulting Growth Hour. We meet every 2 weeks, unless there's a holiday or I'm traveling. And you know, we talk about one specific topic with respect to consulting, and I typically choose the topic based on what I feel is important, and we have a Q&A in the end. So that's it. It's pretty simple and it's interactive. I like it to be interactive. If you have something to say, just let me know, and you know, you can jump on and we can you know, have a quick discussion. If you have a clarification on some of the answers that I provide for these questions, then don't hesitate to raise your hand and jump in, and you know, let's have a discussion. Okay, cool. So let's get started. So the first question that I received is this. So Joy says, outcomes are often not clear when business owners start engagements with consultants. How can we consultants actually take the conversation to what could be the possible outcomes in order to close the deal on that engagement? Okay, so I think it's a good question. Let me just change my view. So as consultants, when we sell stuff, we are, you know, we're selling intangibles, right? We're not selling products that customers can feel and touch. So how do you define what you're selling? Especially, you know, in a professional service, you don't know typically what you're selling, right? In the sense that you don't, you know what you're selling, but how do you define the outcome that in a way that is clear for your for the buyer, especially because you haven't produced that outcome yet. I mean, you're promising some kind of value, but that value has not been produced yet. So how do you define that? So the way I want to tackle this question is to split it into two. So when we're talking about outcomes, there's one part of the business where you need to talk about your outcomes in your messaging, in your communication to a general audience, right? The next place or event that in which you need to talk, you'll need to talk about your outcomes and define your outcomes is in that discovery conversation with a potential client. Okay, so let's just let's break those two down. So with respect to talking about outcomes in your messaging, when I say messaging, it's the stuff that you write on your website, the messages that you put out on your website, the messaging that you do on LinkedIn, not the one-to-one messaging on an inbox with somebody else, but your profile, what's written on your profile, what's written on your headline. How do you communicate the value of your services and what you do to your audience, right? That's the primary place where you need to talk about the kind of outcomes that you're going to provide to your audience. Otherwise, they're not going to be interested in having a conversation. Okay, so the way I think about outcomes, okay, let me just share my screen, because I had written something about this recently in a LinkedIn post. So I want to provide some context here. Okay, can you all see my LinkedIn post where it says, what's one of the biggest problems I see in the business consulting world? Okay, if you can't, then just send me a chat. But this is a post that I posted recently. It's about the fact that in consulting, one of the biggest problems is that people see themselves as a service provider, not as an outcome provider, right? Everybody wants to provide a service, but people don't buy services. Your clients buy specific outcomes. So how do you talk about those outcomes? In this post, I've talked about a few examples of how to frame your outcomes. Okay, these could be predictable revenue growth. Let me just see if I can increase the. So here are certain outcomes: predictable revenue growth. Oh my God, I lost it. There you go. Predictable revenue growth, more customers, increased sales volume, increased share of wallet, increased profitability. These are all outcomes. These are all things that, depending on who you're approaching, depending on what your buyers want, these are specific outcomes. And of course, this list is not exhaustive. There are several types of different business outcomes that you can talk about: brand reputation, everything related to efficiency, operations, etc. But this is just a sample list. But here's how I think about framing outcomes. Okay, whenever you talk about a specific outcome in your business, think about these four ways, right? What will your customers win, retrieve, escape, or stop? Win, retrieve, escape, or stop. And you don't have to have frame outcomes for each of them, whatever makes sense for you. Like, for example, let's take the win. I mean, this is just a framework to think about outcomes, right? So let's say you use the win framework. So through your services, okay, let's say you're an HR consultant. Through your services, and you provide HR strategy, what can your customers win as a result of that? With great HR strategy, they will have the opportunity to win the best employees, right? What are they gaining? The best employees for the right roles, a measured hiring process, employees that are onboarded in a structured manner so as to improve performance down the line so that they're happy, and so on and so forth. So what are the various things or various factors or gains that your clients can potentially get? That's what they, winning. What can they retrieve? Like, think about it, like, is there anything that your clients could possibly retrieve? Like, for example, lost reputation, right? If you're a consulting firm that helps in, let's say, improving the brand of your clients, right? And if you feel that your clients have predominantly working in an industry where they've lost their reputation, those are the types of clients you want, you're going to help them retrieve their reputation. If you're in the sales consulting, for example, how can you help them retrieve lost customers, right? So that's another way to think about outcomes: retrieve. The third way is escape. What do you help? What do your services help your clients escape from? Can you think of some examples, like escape from an increase in inflationary pressure that's coming up in the economy today, for example? I'm just making it up. But what do you remove what do you prevent happening in your client organization, right? And the final distinction is stop. What do you stop your clients from? What do you stop from happening in your client's organization? Do you stop increased costs? Do you stop employee attrition, for example? There are so many things that you can prevent happening in your client's organization, and that would be outcomes as well. So outcomes are not always what you gain, but it could also be what you help your clients escape from and help stop happening as well. Okay, so that's just a basic overview on how to frame outcomes when you're talking about outcomes in your messaging and your communication. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing screen. keep keep the chat busy with your questions. I'm going to stay as long as you want. I have nothing after this. So as long as there are questions, I'm going to be around. Okay, so as far as messaging and communication is concerned, that's how I think about outcomes. Now, Joy, who asked this question, he probably wanted to know how to have a conversation. When you're having a conversation with a potential client, how do you frame those outcomes? And in order to kind of close the deal. So when you're having a discovery conversation, a one-on-one with a client, with a potential client, and you're understanding their needs, right? In those scenarios, you want to get very deep. You want to get deeper because now you're not talking to a mass market, right? You're not talking to multiple people. You're talking to one specific client with a specific problem. So in those situations, you want to go really deep and understand what is not only what outcome they want, but what is the current metric, or what is the current performance like? Okay, so I look at it in a scale. So just look at the on the bottom part of the scale is where your clients are today. On the top part is where they want to be. So in a discovery conversation, you want to really drill down on both, on where they are right now and where they want to be as well. So let's do an example. I'm just gonna type in the chat, anyone, like give me an example industry. Let's do this live. I mean, I don't want to take too much time on this, but I want to do this live. So pharma, Wendy says pharma. Okay, so what function within pharma? So what are you selling? Just give me an example. Okay, let's just say that you're selling HR. No, I took the HR example. The sales example is too easy. You're selling Advil. Okay, I was thinking about if that was a serious question or not. Okay, let's say you're selling operations services, where you go in and you kind of help your improve pharma operations as an operations consultant. So the first thing you want to do is, when you're having a conversation with a potential buyer, is you want to understand where that current buyer is. What is the current state of that business? So when you're talking operations in a pharma, let's say the operations director or the VP of operations is concerned about the way, like, the organization is structured. There's too many people. There's the organization isn't planned in a very efficient manner, etc. The costs are like going crazy. Efficiency is low. So you want to understand, what are the metrics? Like, how do you, when you look at your organization today, what are the metrics by which you measure current performance? So if it's operations, then the way it's typically measured is in terms of productivity and efficiency. And productivity is essentially output over input, right? So in terms of the way people are in whatever department you're in are kind of producing their work, you need to figure out what the current measure is. So let's say he's talking about a sales team, and they say, okay, the sales team is kind of the targets are at 40%, the target is at 80%, but then they're producing only like up to 50%. So you got to figure out how you can quantify the current state. When you're looking at efficiencies, it's a percentage. When you're looking at sales, you can even look at it as a dollar figure, right? Or even volume. When you're looking at it as in terms of HR, in terms of numbers, you can look at it in terms of um, number of employees. So what I'm trying to say is that in order for you to kind of lay out the right outcome that you can provide, you first need to understand what the current state is. So you want to ask questions with respect to what are the current metrics by which you measure performance, okay? And you got to put a number around that, whether it's revenue, whether it's volume, whether it's time, or whether it's, you know, number of people, okay? And then you go to, okay, what's your desired outcome? Like right now, your efficiency is at 40%. What's your desired outcome? And then you talk about, you know, you quantify that again. Like let's say, okay, we want to be at 75%, or we want to be 80%. Then what you've done is in that conversation, you have created value. That's what creating value in a conversation is, where you've quantified where they want to be today, and you have also understood and probed where they want to be tomorrow, or in a specific period of time, whether it's 6 months or 12 months, right? And today they're at 40%. Tomorrow they want to be, or 6 months down the line, they want to be at 80%. So you've created value in that conversation in the sense that you're going to frame your discussion around, okay, here's what we can do to help you increase your efficiency from 40% to 80%. Here's what we can do to reduce the time taken to go to market from 75 days to 50 days. That's another example. Here's what we can do to increase sales output or sales volume from 100,000 units to 150,000 units in 6 months, for example. So in that conversation, when you talk about outcomes, as much as possible, try and quantify the outcome, because then you'll be able to kind of define value. Okay. Now, I feel that most business outcomes can be quantified. Sometimes you can't quantify outcomes, but as far as possible, if you can quantify outcomes, then do so. Because that's when you will kind of make it very clear to your audience, or to the potential buyer, that, you know, now we have some kind of frame of reference as to what we're dealing with and what we're kind of looking to solve. Okay. So that's a general way I usually look at outcomes, and most consultants I work with, you know, we figure out how to quantify the outcome in a sales, not sales, but in a discovery conversation. Because again, let me just share the screen again. In these examples of outputs, these examples of outcomes, predictable revenue growth, more customers, increased sales volume, all of these can be quantified. Even things like increased retention is quantified as a percentage, reduced absenteeism, right? You know, these are outcomes of employee engagement services. One of my clients was an employee engagement consultant, and here's what we came up with. These are the outcomes that you can talk about and even quantify. Measure the absenteeism today, and then post your services. Typically, here's how you would increase the service, increase the you know, or reduce the absenteeism, or increase retention in general, right? So that's how I do it. Anybody have a question or a clarification, or you need more input on that? Just, you want to come? Anybody want to come on? I'm happy to take anyone on. Okay. Sure, Anza. So Anza says, I believe outcomes can be majorly quantified, and that's what makes it easier for the client to relate to. Let's say if a startup wants to raise funds and needs market research to help. Exactly. See, you know, it's easy to kind of quantify raising funds, increasing sales, reducing costs, and so on and so forth. Some of the harder things to quantify are things like brand reputation, for example. Like, how do you quantify that? Like, how do you quantify things like I don't know, culture, right? If you're a culture employee type of consultant, where you come in and you help develop and increase the uh, um, create a better culture, how would you quantify that in a short period of time? Like, it takes time for those things. For the longest time for me, as a strategic planning consultant, I used to help strategic planning companies and organizations do strategic planning, but the outcome of strategic planning took years. So I couldn't kind of, help, I couldn't quantify that, right? But what I could say is that here's what I'm going to do. I quantified my services in terms of time and say, look, here's where you are in your business today, right? And in 6 months, I'm going to help you launch a product, or I'm going to help you launch your business, or I'm going to help you license one of your technologies, right? It was, I took them through a strategic planning and business planning process, but the outcome was 6 months down the line, here's what I can do for you. It's not like, okay, every outcome doesn't have to be like 3 years or 5 years down the line. What can you do in the short term that is valuable for the client, which you can explain clearly? That could be an outcome as well, right? As long as clients and potential buyers understand the value of what you are offering, as long as it aligns with what they're looking for, that's what you want to go with.
All right. I'm sorry. Am I visible? Am I audible now?
Yes.
Okay. So basically, the question which I believe it's okay if I ask a question which is not necessarily in proper agreement with the subject here, but I just put it down in the chat box earlier. So I just wanted to know because I have been facing this issue lately since I have a consulting firm of my own. And since we call ourselves as a fundraising experts or we have built a brand around it. So is it okay if you just come across your audience in a way that you say that we do specialize in fundraising, but how about if we present ourselves as an authority and which is quite related to another field. So maybe like a sales consultant, but I am good with fundraising as well. So the question here is, wouldn't that give the client the idea that he is actually trying to be the jack of all trades and not the master of one? So what's your take on it?
Yeah, so I understand you said this is something slightly different, and it's okay. It's perfectly fine. Since you asked the question, yes, like if you've been following me for some time, and if you want to look at my posts as well, I'm always in favor of being a specialist. So when you want to sell something, when you want to take something to market, you have to be very clear about what you're trying to offer the marketplace, the outcomes that you want to provide to the marketplace, and how you're going to do that. If you're going to sell 5 different things to 5 different markets, it's really difficult for you to go to market, because how can you choose who to market to? How can you choose your messaging? How can you kind of choose the value proposition that you bring to the marketplace? It'll all be different things, and you'll be trying to market and promote 5 different things, 5 different channels, and that's going to lead to burnout. So the short answer to your question, Anza, is that yes, you want to, before you create a marketing plan, you want to make sure that you pick the right problem to solve based on your expertise, and pick the type of customer that you want to sell to, who has the ability and the willingness to purchase your services.
Right.
Okay. So yeah, cool. Thanks for the question. I want to move on to the next question that came in. This is a good one. This is by Andre. He says, what are the steps of selecting and entering a new market? So Andre has been in the IT consulting world and wanted to know how to sell services to a new geographic market. Okay, so let me just tackle this question in 3 ways. Okay, So the first thing, even before we talk about approach to entering a new market, what you want to really have clarity around is the unmet market need. Anything you sell anywhere, whether it's in your current market or another market, there has to be some kind of unmet need that you bring to the market. So you want to have clarity around that, right? You may be selling something in market A, but in market B, which you want to move to, the need may be slightly nuanced or different. So you want to really understand before you kind of go to market, or you want to understand, like, as much as you can, what that need is. And the more you understand of that, that need, the more likely you will be in, the likely you'll, the better chance you'll have in penetrating that market. For example, you're selling, let's say, project management services. You're selling in your current market. If you sell project management services, typically companies they're okay with remote consulting, for example. I'm just making stuff up. They're okay with remote consulting. That's the culture. But you want to move to another market. The unmet market need is that companies want people to come in and work, because that's the culture in that new market. So you want to understand the differences in those two markets, and you want to understand that the need in that market is that, it's more of going in, working one-on-one with your clients and the various people in the organization, delivering a smaller workshop as opposed to bigger workshops. I mean, I'm just making stuff up, but you get the gist. Okay, so before you even try and approach a new market, just make sure that you do the research and you understand what the nuances are for that market. So I'm going to talk about 3 approaches that I've done myself. And of course, whatever I'm talking about here, whatever I say is based on, of course, my experience. It's not like the be all and end all. So whatever I say, I'm happy to kind of clarify. I'm happy if somebody else comes in and provides their, addition, a build to what I'm saying, because, what we're doing over here is I want it to be like a community where it's more interactive. But here are 3 strategies that you can use to enter a new market. Strategy number 1 is, in consulting, the easiest way that I know of where you can land clients is through referrals, right? Most people start off a consulting business and they leverage their network. Okay, and that's a great way to do it, because someone who refers you transfers that trust to that new prospect or the new person that you've been referred to. So you don't have to prove yourself from scratch, right? As an aside, where most consulting business owners go wrong is they end up depending on referrals for the growth of their business. Referrals are great, but depending on referrals is not the most prudent strategy. But if you're entering a new market, then the first place I would start is making a list of ideal accounts in that new market. Okay, if it's ideal, when I say ideal accounts, it's ideal companies, right? Up to, let's say, 50 or 60 or even 100 companies that you want to do business with, right? If your market is like mid to large companies, okay, make a list of companies. If your market is small businesses, then there's going to be like, thousands of small businesses. In that case, make a list of potential buyers of your services in that new market. Now, what you want to do is use tools like LinkedIn and Sales Navigator and look at those accounts, those companies that you've listed, or you look at the buyers that you've listed, the potential buyers, and check out in your network who in your network is connected to these folks, right? And actively seek out referrals to those individuals that you've listed out. Now, the problem with this approach, in theory, it's fine, but practically, what's going to happen is that on LinkedIn and Sales Navigator, Sales Navigator is the premium tool of LinkedIn, which I use a lot, and I recommend other people use as well. But a practical problem is that most people on LinkedIn accept requests from anybody and
any
everybody.
other person.
Yes. So what happens is that once you look at your ideal buyers and your accounts and look at who's connected to them, you may not find connections or kind of a route to all of those ideal buyers or all of those ideal companies. So you want to have multiple. Let's say out of those 100 companies, you found 10 companies that which has connections which people in your network are connected to. Or you find in your list of ideal buyers, you find, let's say, 15 or 20 people that you may your connections are connected to. So you want to go with a list of, let's say, 10 or 15, so that when you ask around in your network, even if like 10 people say that, look, I don't know this other person, you may get a few referrals, like maybe 3 or 4 referrals, which could be a good start in that new market. So I would suggest that the first thing you do is leverage who you already know in order to land conversations with your ideal buyers in that new market. Okay. Number 2, can you partner with other firms in that new market? Now, I've done this before as well. Can you identify other consulting firms, maybe larger consulting firms that are looking for subcontractors? Like, I've subcontracted a lot when I ran my management consulting firm. In the initial days, I built a relationship with a slightly larger firm, and I did a small piece of, I did strategic planning, but I subcontracted for primary market research, which is a part of strategic planning. But I just offered the service that the other consulting firm needed, right? So you got to identify other consulting firms and propose that, whether you can subcontract or not, right? This is, again, it's a longer route. Partnerships is definitely a longer route. It takes time. You've got to make the connections. Again, look on LinkedIn, Sales Navigator, get referrals from your own network. Look at your alumni network from your university or college, and see if you can connect with people, then have them connect you with potential partners. So all that, again, takes time. And then the partner has to have the need for the specific service, and he has to have the opportunity to take you on as a subcontractor. So that takes time as well, but that's an approach, right? I would always kind of default to going direct. Going direct is the fastest way to land new clients. Most of us consultants, consulting business owners, don't go direct because we've never sold before. We don't like sales. We're technical folks, and we're averse to sales. So we try and like hide behind that fear and try and make partnerships and do all kinds of things and keep ourselves busy, except for getting in front of a potential buyer. Whereas in fact, getting in front of a potential buyer, having the courage to do that, is by far the fastest way you can land new clients. And in consulting, you don't need too many clients to keep your firm going. You need a handful of clients in the short term. Like, let's say most consulting firms will be happy with about 5 clients, in 6 to 8 months or whatever the period is. Because we're not mass marketers, we're not B2C players, we're not volume marketers. So if you land 1 or 2 clients by going direct, that could generate revenue for the short term and keep the lights on in your firm. Okay, so going direct is fastest. If you can't go direct, if you dry up those sources, try and approach a partner to enter that market. And number 3, this again takes slightly longer, but it's a very effective approach. Build your own network in the new market. Look at, again, through the list of buyers and accounts that you've created, reach out to those folks directly and introduce yourself and get connected, right? Don't sell anything. Just say that you are a service provider or your consulting firm does X, Y, or Z in this specific market. And, you are connecting with folks like themselves in that new market, and you create a lot of content around that subject. So when I reach out to folks in my market, I tell them that, I create a lot of content for management consultants in, in sales and marketing. I create in topics such as sales and marketing. I'd love to stay current with what you're up to, and I know that I'll be, I'm confident that I can add value to you as well. So that's the gist of my message. And when I connect with people, I don't go and, send them a pitch, the next message. I don't. I try to share a lot of content that they may find valuable. I have events like this as well, and build a relationship, get to know them. Not everybody's going to become a client, and that's okay. Those that are, find resonance in what I'm saying will have a conversation with me, right? So the same thing is applicable when you enter a new market. Build your own network. People on LinkedIn are generally on the network, on the channel to grow their network and to learn. So if you are positioning yourself as someone that is going to share content that is beneficial to them, then a certain percentage of people may be willing to connect with you. And then they'll see your posts in the feed related to what their challenges are. And they may be attracted to what you sell and, may want to have a conversation with you. This can take time, right? It's not something that happens overnight. Give it about 3 to 6 months at least before you start gaining momentum. Right. So those are the 3 ways that I can think of, and I've done all 3 of them, and I know they work. There you can use to enter a new market. Number 1, leverage your network. Number 2 is try and find a partner, and number 3 is connect directly and share content that is valuable and build connections and credibility in that market. All right. So any follow-up questions, please type in the chat. Lots of activity in the chat. I'll come back to these other comments and questions, but I want to take on the next one. Okay, so John says, I've seen multiple reports indicating that for cold calling, it can take 10 to 12 touches before success. However, most people stop after 3 or 4 tries. In your experience, what is the best method to reduce the number of contacts for success? Or put another way, how can the first 3 or 4 tries be improved to be successful? It's a great question. It's a really good question. And, I have a short answer and a long answer. The short answer, John, is that before you reach out to anybody cold, you got to make sure that you build affinity with that group of individuals or that individual. They should already know and trust your abilities or your brand before you reach out cold. That's the short answer. So, okay, so let's go to the long answer. The long answer is that, cold calling can be a challenge to most consultants. I'm not going to dismiss cold calling because I know that, most approaches work. Most lead generation approaches work. It depends on the context. It depends on who's doing it and how you're doing it and so on. I know consultants who use cold calling. They've got some success. I know of one consultant who's got major success through cold calling. But I know of some others as well who've got moderate success through cold calling. So I know it works, but I don't think that cold calling in itself is the most effective way to land your next new client, right? Especially for consulting business owners. And here's why. Most consulting business owners, not saying all of them, most of them are hired for their individual skills. When a consultant hires you, the principal consultant who's also the business owner, they want you to help them, you to be involved in the projects and in the engagements. So a lot of consulting business owners are directly involved in engagement delivery and client work as well, right? And that's the biggest problem our community faces. You're doing the work and you got to sell the work as well. You're constantly doing the work and you got to sell the work as well. And the problem with doing the work is that the work is predominantly deadline driven, right? There's so many moving parts to engagements. You got to deliver the work. So when the nature of your work is such, you invariably put the prospecting work in the back burner, and that becomes very inconsistent. So if you're delivering the work and you're expected to consistently cold call, right? That's not in all likelihood that's not going to go well, unless you're like you're efficient like a robot. Most people are not. Like you're going to be, sometimes your other projects are going to be are going to stretch you a little bit. You may put off cold calling. So there's going to be like ups and downs in your cold calling routine. And the nature of cold calling is that you want to be doing multiple cold calls, because cold calling is a volume game, as far as I know. It's like you can't just expect to make like 20 calls a day and then make sure you land clients, right? The best cold callers that I know are that's their full-time job, right? They do 200 dials a day and still get just a minuscule percentage of people to respond, and then those people who respond, out of that, a small percentage would be qualified, and then they got to pick themselves up and do the same thing the next day, 200 dials. So cold calling in general is tough for consulting business owners, right? I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's tough. But if you want to do it, right, here's what I would recommend. Do whatever you can to make sure that your audience has affinity. They know you, right? So what I mean by that is that you've got to find a way to meaningfully produce and share educational content that is relevant to your buyer. You've got to find a way to build some sort of a community around the problem that you solve and emerge as the leader of that community and help people in that community. What will happen when you do that is you're going to build affinity and you're going to build trust, and people are going to know you. They're going to know John as the X guy, the guy who does this, and who solves this specific problem. And then in that community, when you find that there are opportunities to serve that community, if you cold call them, if you send them an email, or if you give them a call or send them a LinkedIn direct message, then you have a better chance of getting a better response and not having 10 to 12 touches or whatever the stats are. You can reduce the number of tries when your audience has already knows you and likes you and trusts you. Okay, so John, I know you're here, so if you'd like, please jump on, and I'd like to discuss, if you so wish, and answer any questions or clarifications.
Hi, thanks, Faheem. Thanks for taking that question, and I appreciate the short and the long answer portions of that. I think you certainly hit the nail on the head when it comes time to building an affinity and building your brand and being known in the marketplace, and that's very important for any consultant. And I think maybe one of the things that we've started to do recently is while I still consider it to be cold calling, it's more like a direct mail campaign. And so we write a letter to explain who we are and just ask them for 30 minutes to have a quick meeting to see if there's ways to collaborate. And that's part of brand awareness as well, I guess. So there's a number of things that tie into it. There's the Bader-Meinhof effect that, if somebody sees something once, they don't remember it. If they see it a second time, it starts to click. The third time, it's like, oh yeah, I remember that one. And it's just building that presence, and that does take some time. There's no doubt. We have to expect that something we do today may not produce an immediate result, but it maybe 6 months time it does. So there's a multiplying effect. You have to be consistent, and I appreciate what you've said about setting some specific time during the week for your marketing activities, because otherwise, I fully agree with you. Yeah, you get buried in a project, and all of a sudden the projects come to an end, and you're sitting there going, well, what do we do next? Got to be consistently adding to that pipeline or funnel or whatever you want to call it. And so, it's like you say, I mean, something you do today might not produce a result. If you do the same thing next week, might not produce a result. If you do it, the third week, you might get something there.
Right.
And so it is challenging. There's the, the whole idea too is that, yes, you got to build that awareness, because they may not have an immediate need for your service today, but in 3 months' time, there might be a trigger event that
and
happens.
at that time, they should remember you at that time, right?
You've got to be top of mind at that point.
So let me ask you this, John. So in your consulting practice, do you end up as the business owner, are you expected to do a lot of delivery work as well?
Yeah, absolutely. The business is built on my experience and my network and my qualifications, and that's fine. That I enjoy doing that. For me, I don't enjoy doing the marketing, so that makes it that much harder again. But if you don't do the marketing, you don't get to do the reports. So you gotta, you gotta have a balance there somewhere, for sure.
Yeah, nobody enjoys marketing. Like I said, like consultants are technical folks. They have a technical skill. They're experienced at that. They've taken the decision to become start a consulting business because they have expertise, and they don't want to do anything else, right? Everybody thinks that when you start a business, you're only going to be working on your technical, expertise and work. But then it's when you run a business, you got to make sure that you drive revenues, drive clients, et cetera, et cetera. So, so nobody enjoys marketing. But what I've realized is that a useful distinction that I learned is that I don't look at it as marketing. I look at it as education. I try and educate the market and on not just what they can do better, but I also educate them on problems that they may not know, they may not be aware of. Educate them on what is possible, right? Open up their minds about what specific outcomes can be possible. Educate them on consequences of staying in the status quo, right? And educate them on opportunity costs as well. Like a lot of times, buyers don't think deeply about the decisions they've made to meet their business objectives. They make certain decisions, and they're so knee deep, or not knee deep, but neck deep in their day to day that they don't consider whether or not they're making the right decisions in order to move forward and meet their business objectives. So, as an educator who's also running a business, I try and open up their minds on what could be possible, what problems could they encounter that they don't know about, what are the consequences of staying in the same place, in the status quo, and doing nothing, what are the opportunity costs that they may be going through. So when I look at it in terms of education and talk about the factors that I've laid out over here, I find that creates some demand as well. They look at the content and they go, yeah, okay, that makes sense. And slowly they build affinity, and that affinity turns into trust. And when they need somebody like me, when they're looking for the category of services that I offer, they reach out. So I'm always having conversations with people in LinkedIn DMs, and I don't push, my services on anybody, but I'm always having conversations. And when and if and when they're ready, they reach out. So I would suggest that, if you don't like marketing, just look at it as education. And the other thing that I keep telling people about is that the biggest strength that consultants have, one of the biggest strengths, is their knowledge and the expertise, right? When you market your consulting business, you use your knowledge and expertise because you're teaching, right? You're teaching and you're educating. So you're not doing anything different. We're not trying to, be sleazy, or we're not trying to push our services on people that don't want them. We're trying to educate the market based on what we know about the market. And we're trying to build affinity, build trust, and in doing so, have genuine conversations and build authentic relationships with our audience and community. And through that, you'll get your next client. There's no guarantee it'll happen next month, but you keep doing it on a weekly basis, and then you'll find that you're consistently talking to potential buyers that will lead to opportunities down the line.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right, and we've tried to take some of the lessons we've learned through your discussion group and through your LinkedIn post and apply them in our business. And so we're financial services consultants. So basically, I work with large to medium-sized businesses to help them optimize their banking infrastructures. And one of the things we've started in our messaging is to say, if we save you, $200,000-$300,000 a year on your banking, you can take that and do different things with it. Yes, you can just leave it in your company and do whatever, but if you apply that for employee benefits or scholarships for employee kids, or however which way, donations, sponsorships, whatever, you can amplify the results of those and turn that into much greater benefit than simply the dollar savings that you're generating.
Absolutely.
And so it is right. I've taken your notes about outcomes today, and yeah, we'll work that into our messaging and that sort of thing. And I've been successful in that. If I can sit down with a client face to face, I can probably close a deal. But it's getting to that point with people, and certainly the pandemic hasn't helped that over the last 2 years. But things seem to be opening up a little bit now. So.
Right, that's the challenge. The challenge is always getting in front of people. Most consultants, when they have a conversation with people, their conversion rate is pretty high because they're the technical folks, and they can have that conversation.
Yeah.
But how do you get to that point where you're sitting in front of a potential buyer and having the conversation? And so that's why marketing is important. And when I say marketing, it's nothing but education. So and it fits with what consultants have strengths in, right? Their knowledge.
Yeah.
Right.
And like you, I've taken the term marketing and broken it down differently within our business, and I call it brand awareness, and business development. And you can paint it whatever color you want. It's still marketing, but it helps a little bit if we change the nomenclature around it. So.
Right. Yeah. So I'm gonna move on. I hope that was helpful, John. I'm gonna move on to.
Absolutely, always are. Thank you.
Great. I'll move on to the next question. I'm mindful of time. I know some of you may want to jump, but I'm going to be around. I also want to say that if you've been enjoying these sessions of this session, I'm going to post a quick link to today's LinkedIn post. So if you could be so kind as to just post a comment about whether you like the session or not, anything, whatever you feel like writing in that post, I would appreciate it. Okay, so the link is posted. I'm going to move on to the fourth question that I got, that I received prior to the session. What is the ideal content to show when someone visits a consultant profile on LinkedIn? I realize the visiting experience relates to a more recruiting aspect than a communication characteristic. Any thoughts? Now, I told Ruben that I did not understand fully the second piece of that question, but I think, and I asked him and I haven't received a response, so I'm going to take a crack at what I think he meant. But the first part of the question is, what is the ideal content to show when someone visits a consultant profile on LinkedIn? Okay, it's a good question. The way I look at it is that, let me just share my screen again. The way I look at it is I look at real estate. Really, when I say real estate, it's where you communicate. It's either your website or your LinkedIn profile. All this is, real estate. So when I look at, where you market and where you push your messages, the home feed, right? The home feed where people would, are browsing and have the opportunity to see your content. I call those, demand creation channels, like a blog, like even a blog feed or, a Twitter feed or any social channel. I call it a demand creation channel. Here's when you're putting out your thoughts and you're putting out your education that we just discussed, and you're kind of helping the market and helping your audience improve in some way, shape, or form, and building affinity, building trust, right? Here's where you create your demand. But the profile, your personal profile on LinkedIn, and your website as well, like your website, your contact page, those are called, I call them demand capture channels, right? A profile page on LinkedIn is pretty much static. Even your website, it's a static page. You're not always, putting out content on a daily basis on your web pages, right? Especially the homepage and the contact page. Those are demand capture channels. So the theory is that when people see content on the feed, if they like the content of the feed, they would go to the person's profile, and so that profile has to capture that demand. Demand has been created as you create content, and the interested individuals land on your profile, and when that happens, you need to be capturing that demand. When I say capturing that demand, is you need to have a call to action. You need to kind of talk about, what you can do for your audience, and take them on a journey which ends in a call to action where they are prompted to take a specific action, either send you their email address, or book a call with you, or take some other action that would enable you to start a buying relationship, if that person so chooses. Okay, so it's obviously up to the person that comes in and lands on your profile page. So if you look at my profile page, I talk about, what I can do for my client. So consultants are reading my profile, my content would come in to the profile page, and they would see, okay, here's what I do. Okay, and then they would go to the about section. Okay, the about section or the experience section, same thing. I mean, in terms of content. So I talk about what I know about them and who my avatar is, my client, my ideal client profile. I'll take them through what I do, who I help, how I do it, etc. And there's a call to action, which says, when you're ready, let's chat for 15 minutes. Okay, that's the call to action. Same thing is in the experience section, right? It's the exact same content with a call to action. So you see, I don't write, random content in my about section and my experience section. It's all about what I can do for my clients. But in a demand creation channel, which is the home feed, I'm not shouting from the rooftops about, what I can do for my people. I'm not selling there. I'm not doing anything. I'm not even talking about myself, right? In a demand creation channel, I just want to, educate and help, right? So that I build affinity and build trust, so that the people that find resonance in what I'm saying would look back at my profile, and that's where I can capture demand. So to answer the question about what to put in your LinkedIn profile is that I want to make sure that I'm telling the right story about what I can do for my clients. And I want to have a very strong call to action that makes sense. For me, it's book a Zoom call. That's what I want my prospects to do. Okay, so that's on my page, on my profile page. For you, it could be something else. It could be, type in your email address and download a report or whatnot. There are multiple ways to do this. There are, you can be successful in doing it differently. Okay. And the second part of the question, which I didn't understand, I think I'm going to take a crack at it. He says that I realized the visiting experience relates to a more recruiting aspect than a communication characteristic. So what he's trying to say, I think, is that you're trying to recruit them as customers or clients. So you want your profile to the language in that profile to reflect that, which I think is right. Yes. And I wouldn't use the word recruiting, but I would say that yes, you want to have a strong call to action rather than simply giving out a generic message in your profile. Okay, so I hope that helps. I want to quickly, and I want to just encourage all of you to connect with each other as well, because we're all consultants and we all help each other. So please connect with each other on LinkedIn. Moving on. So Wendy says less disequilibrium, focused, engaged staff. Okay, yeah, Wendy, you were talking about an example that I wanted. I didn't see that. Anza, we talked about your question. Okay. Anza about outcomes. So Shweta says 3 things that work for deliverables for project management consulting. It's timeline, money, percentage of a number of users, customers. Exactly. Yes. So all those can be quantified. Timeline. It's like project management is what? Budget, time, budget, scope, and time, right? So how can you use those factors to produce outcomes that your buyers would find value in? Okay, how to negotiate for price in the financial consulting sector? Okay, so that's the final question. Abdul Salam, how do you negotiate the price in the financial sector? Do you want to come on, Abdul Salam, if you're on? I want to understand that question a little bit more. So the financial consulting sector could be...
yes.
Yeah, go ahead. What do you mean? Tell me about your business.
Hello everybody. My business is regarding to giving consultants especially focus on the banking and financing, especially in Islamic banking finance. Okay. I'm also very giving consulting regarding to, there are some financial institutions now. So Islamic financial institutions, they want to involve in the blockchain and cryptocurrency. Mm-hmm. So in order not to leave behind. So this is the area which I'm working. So in order to make, people are consulting me. So I have a firm now here in the UAE, which is, I call it Kitme Smart Consultancy. So this is we are also giving training for those, for the awareness of creating awareness among the people, in the financial sectors, especially Islamic Bank, who they don't have more knowledge about how this blockchain and cryptocurrency works. So
okay, so you provide training about blockchain and cryptocurrency to the Islamic finance institutions?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, and so the question is regarding how do you negotiate with these institutions? Is that it?
Exactly. So, in terms of
what are you? Yeah, go ahead.
In order to know because this is a new sector, so whereby know the price based on your experience. So how to, maybe you have already across this, so in order to be in the safe side or win-win side.
What do you offer them? What services specifically are you offering these institutions?
I offer them a series of there are some who would like also to invest in this cryptocurrency. Okay. So, and there are some use cases where they want to use. So this is the thing where I'm consulting them that this is good and how to do it.
Yeah.
So this.
So what you want to first do is really understand what they want. Like, yeah, they want to invest in cryptocurrency, or they want to get trained in blockchain and all these other technologies.
They want to invest.
Yeah, if they want to,
some would like to invest their money because you know that they are consulting that which token or coin they can buy in order to make money. That is one thing. Or which kind of what is which kind of protocol they can use in order for their products, in order to give them a good solution.
Yeah, so you're like a financial advisor, right? Who understands the crypto world, right? So,
yep.
So you mean if you look at could you put together can they invest through you? I mean, do you have a crypto fund that they can invest in?
I have some protocol. We have this coin, which we call it a mid coin. But there are some they want to invest in another coin, like a Bitcoin or Ethereum or BNB. So they just come to consult that which the token they can invest in order to make more money, or which is benefit for their portfolio.
Yeah, so see, this is all new territory, right? Like crypto and stuff. It's really new. So you may want to experiment with different types of pricing. Like I know that in the financial advisory world, people that sell mutual funds, various types of funds, equities and debt, they sell those funds, and they get investors to invest in those funds, and they make a percentage of the assets under management, right, based on the value of the assets. So that's one way to look at it. If you're selling education and training about these, new financial assets and so on and so forth, maybe that could be, depending on that, what the outcome for that training is. Like if they're going to learn about a few things that would then, help them grow some of their assets or invest in some of these alternative ways, you need to kind of first define what those outcomes are. Like if you train them on something, what are they learning? What's getting done in that training? And what's that training going to help them do? Is it going to help them diversify? Again, look at those business outcomes that I talked about. What can they win? What can they retrieve? What can they escape or stop? Is your training going to help them diversify their asset base and reduce risk? Right? Reducing risk is an outcome as well. Can it help them do something else? Like you figure out like what these Islamic banks want, and what challenges they're facing, and what your organization or your consulting firm can help them win, retrieve, escape, or stop. Once that exercise is done, that's when you go into the pricing conversation. So the first step I would advise you to do, Abdus Salam, is really think about the outcomes as we talked about today, and then you have the pricing conversation.
You know that. Thank you very much. This is a very, very useful. I would say webinar, and because we do also training, and what most of the thing you mentioned, alhamdulillah, is very useful, very useful information.
I'm happy that you found value in it.
Yes, the thing which is I don't find is because that is in order to come to negotiation. So the pricing, this is the thing that's why let me ask you, that maybe you, based on your experience, so I can get that one also, which is a very hard.
I'll leave you with this. Like, pricing is a function of value, right? Like, what value are you bringing to the table? How are you making their world better, right?
Okay.
So that you've got to be very clear on that first. That's only once you're clear on that can you have that pricing conversation, or can you even think about what is this worth to this organization, right? So unless you clarify and in your own head about the value that you're creating for the organization, and then value is a function of how can they improve? What are they missing in their business right now, which you can come in and offer, like in terms of these education and training and services. So we need to get clarity on that. I've written a lot about this stuff on my blog, so just either look at my LinkedIn feed or my blog, and then you can. I'll put my URL, so you can kind of take a look at that and just check my blog as well. So you'll see a lot of information on pricing and value creation and value proposition on the blog. I hope that helps.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, you're most welcome. All right, guys. Thank you so much for sticking around. John, Monique, Jimmy, Wendy, Fawad, and Abdussalam. If there's anything else, I'm happy to be here. John, thanks again for showing up and supporting the community. Always appreciate you being here. Wendy, you as well. Good to see you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right. Great. So thanks, guys. I'll look forward to seeing you on the next one. Ciao.
Have a good day.
You too.